it's important to know the difference between the symptoms of depression and anxiety for a dementia resident. So if, for example, they're depressed, then they will be downcast, dejected, low mood, no motivation. If in contrast they're anxious, then they will be tense, uptight, and on edge. It's also important to know whether the depression or anxiety is at low level, moderate level, or high level. If it's at low level, the symptoms will be there occasionally. If moderate level, the symptoms will be there much of the time and most of the time. And if at high level, the symptoms will be there constantly, so there's no respite. So once you know whether the condition is either depression or anxiety and the level, you're in a much better position to be able to manage, help the person in the dementia facility, and also to be able to communicate at the doctor's meetings about the experience of your relative. So the important thing really is to keep the symptoms down at moderate level and low level. You really don't want these symptoms of either depression or anxiety going up to high level, because that's when it becomes constant, unremitting, and no change. And it's extremely difficult to settle. Whereas because the symptoms in the moderate level are there much of the time, but not most of the time, for example, it could be that, say with anxiety, for example, if your mother gets anxious around meal times, so she's relaxed or she's okay in her room, say maybe low anxiety in her room, but when she goes to meals, because she's not used to being with crowds, because she's been living on her own for many years, she gets a claustrophobic feeling. She's frightened of crowds and she doesn't like being in a situation where she's crammed in or hemmed in. And unfortunately at dementia units, at meal times, it is very crowded. Generally only small dining rooms, and there's 4 people to each table, and that, say, 10, 15 tables are crammed into a small space for 30 people in a dementia unit. So it's very difficult to not be in a crowd, because that is what it's all about at meal times at a dementia unit. Now, if you notice that your mother has only low anxiety when she's in her bedroom, or if she's in the lounge watching TV, but sort of second or third row, where she's not hemmed in right and left or behind with other people, but you also notice that, so she's okay there, she might get a little bit of anxiety in the lounge, but not much, but especially at meal times, her anxiety really goes up, a good 30-40%. You need to really try and think about solutions for that and a strategy to try and settle it somehow, because if that anxiety keeps progressing, it can quite quickly go up to high from moderate, especially if there's extra triggers for the anxiety, like disturbances in the unit, or if some other dementia resident is being distressed or showing distressing behaviour towards your mother, that can trigger extra anxiety on top of it. So try and find a way, for example, around the main trigger and how you can settle it. So with that being meal times, your mother, therefore, as she's getting anxious at meal times, is exposed to that stress, that crowd stress, actually for about 3 hours a day, which is a lot, because each meal, breakfast, lunch and dinner, takes about an hour by the time the person gets to their dining table, sits and waits for the meal, gets it served, eats it, and then it's taken away. I mean, it's all a process. The first part of, everyone can't get their meal all together, so you're sometimes waiting 20 minutes for your meal, and by the time you eat it, that's another 20 minutes, and then clearing up, finding your walker, and then getting back to your room. It takes about an hour. So there's 3 hours then that your mother is experiencing that anxiety. So how to go about settling that? Well, one way of doing it is to try and see if she can get a dining table on the outer rim of the dining area, because there's some dining tables that are right in near the kitchen and others that are more spaced out at the edge of the dining area, more near the lounge area. So if your mother can be on an outer table and even her chair on the outer rim of that, that means that she won't be having people behind her, maybe only one or two people either side at the table, but at least behind her she'll be free of that anxiety and crowd stress. That's one way. Another way of reducing anxiety at mealtime is to be able to go to some meals with her, to be able to calm her down so that she can socialize with you at the meal times. Say if you come once a week on a Sunday for meals, she can socialize with you, so that's respite. And then also you can socialize with the other ladies at the table to make the conversation a bit more upbeat and for her to get to know the other ladies. Because if she's got anxiety, chances are she'll have difficulty communicating with the other women as well. She's got crowd anxiety. She's probably got social anxiety. So if you can ease in the conversations with the other ladies and, chat to them and allow your mother to be in tow with that, that's one way of warming things up and reducing social stress as well. So that's some ways to be able to reduce crowd stress and social stress with moderate anxiety, and hopefully keep it at moderate or low so that it doesn't escalate to high. Avoiding medications. Low-level medication's okay, but you don't want heavy medication for depression or anxiety if you can possibly avoid it. So with depression, for example, if your mother is moderately depressed again, it's always easier to deal with moderate anxiety. Low-level anxiety or low-level depression, you want to keep an eye that it doesn't flick up to moderate level, but it's where the moderate level, once it's at moderate level, it takes a bit of work to settle. So that's why I'm going into this. Now, moderate level depression, if your mother's depressed and she says she's lonely, then but her depression settles when friends and family visit, but in between she's lonely at the unit, then it's very important to try and see if you can activate social connections for your mother so that she's not lonely, so that she meets people, socializes with people. And maybe she's shy, maybe she's nervous, maybe she's depressed because of that. So if she says she's lonely, engage with the activities is probably the best place to start. So there's the newspaper reading in the morning. That's pretty neutral territory. You don't really need to speak much there. It's just more listening. So if you come to the newspaper reading with your mother in the morning, say once or twice a week, so that you're with her, she's less nervous. And then slowly you can go from each week from third row to second row to front row, and your mother can then ease into that. And as you're socializing with the activity coordinator and maybe one or two of the ladies, then your mother will be able to tag on to that and socialize as well. So if you can come to either the press reading or, happy hour or make and create sessions, any activity that your mother enjoys that you're happy to come along to and socialize with the other people at that activity and help your mother engage so that then she can socialize, make friends, be less lonely and have a better life at a dementia unit. So all of this is in these two books, The Resident's Voice and The Resident's Rise, both from a dementia unit. Actually, it's in this book, The Resident's Rise, the epilogues at the end. I've written about 30 pages on depression and anxiety and how to alleviate moderate level. So this is really important reading. If your mother or father has depression or anxiety, then it really is worth getting the book to be able to learn all about that. There really is a lot to it. So thank you very much to all of you for your subscriptions and your viewing and your likes. Please subscribe and please pass on links to other channels. Thank you.